Imagine you are under fluorescent light, trapped in a room that smells like ethanol and hot plastic. You see your own sample tube in a rack, your own cells, labeled ordinary, legal, boring. But the sequencing machine refuses to be boring. It hums like a predator that never sleeps. A ribbon of letters crawls across the screen, A, C, G, T, supposed to spell a familiar ancestry, supposed to confirm a story everyone already believes. But a block of sequence refuses to match. It sits there like a bruise that will not fade. You feel your throat tighten because the mismatch is not random noise. It is patterned, intentional, like a lock that accepts a key that should not exist. You call for another set of eyes. A colleague leans in so close the screen reflects in their pupils. The room goes quiet except for fans and the soft click of a pipette on the bench. Somebody whispers a single word, Neanderthal, as if saying it too loudly makes it impossible. But the shape is wrong. You see it at once. Neanderthal segments have a known signature, a familiar accent in the code. This is sideways. This is a boot print with too many toes. You feel the ground under the normal world crack, because the database has a hole in it. And that hole is inside you. You refresh. You rerun. The machine does not blink. It repeats the same answer with mechanical indifference. Therefore, the problem is not the instrument. The problem is the story. You stare at the family tree everyone recites. Modern humans here, Neanderthals there, a clean branching diagram in a textbook box. But the letters on the screen refuse to sit on any branch you recognize. Therefore, something else stands in the dark, close enough to touch, close enough to leave fingerprints in living blood. You open a new case file. The title appears on your screen like a door creaking open, Denisovan. 2008 AD. Not a city, not a person, just a cave in the Altai Mountains where cold air bites stone. A place that does not care about human timelines. A place that keeps secrets by freezing them. Now imagine the cave itself. You step into the mouth and the light dies behind you. You see the ground layered with old fires, old bones, old dust that once floats in lungs. The cave feels like a throat, swallowing sound. Your headlamp beam shakes across the floor where generations drop their refuse, their tools, their meals. But nothing here looks like a revolutionary discovery. That is the trap. The most dangerous evidence looks like nothing. You kneel. You see a tiny bone fragment, small as a tooth, shaped like a child's finger segment. It weighs almost nothing in the glove. You feel the absurdity of it, the whole human past reduced to something that could fall through a crack in a table. But you bag it anyway because crime scenes reward patience. You label it because a label is a promise. This will be tested. This will be questioned. This will not be forgotten. Back in the lab, you treat the fragment like it carries a curse. Ancient DNA is fragile, contaminated by every modern breath that ever drifts too near. Therefore, you work behind masks and filters. You bleach surfaces until the room smells like a swimming pool. You see technicians move like surgeons, slow hands, strict rules, no romance. But the romance comes later, when the machine starts reading. The first sequences come back broken, shredded, small. You feel the frustration like sand in the teeth. The DNA is not a neat confession. It is a burned letter rescued from a fire. The words crumble when touched. But you do not throw it away. Therefore, you rebuild it from fragments, tiny overlapping pieces, like reassembling a face from ash. Every alignment is a gamble. Every base call is an argument with noise. You see the computer assemble a genome the way a forensic artist sketches a suspect. At first, it is only hints, a curve here, a shadow there. But then patterns emerge. Not modern human, not Neanderthal. Something sister to both, but distinct. Therefore, the cave gives up a name, Denisovan, not as a proud identity, but as a filing label, a placeholder for a being no one knows how to picture. Now the hunt begins, but it is not a hunt with a body. It is a hunt with smears. You move like a detective with a flashlight, sweeping across living genomes. You see segments of archaic DNA scattered through people alive right now, like muddy footprints across a clean floor. Each segment is a smear, and the question is brutal. Is it blood or rust? Is it ancestry or error? Obstacle 1 hits immediately. The evidence is shredded by time. Mutations chew it. Microbes invade it. Handling contaminates it. Therefore, every ancient sequence is suspect. You feel the paranoia build. One wrong assumption and the whole case collapses. You run controls. You repeat extractions. You compare lab to lab. But the ghost keeps appearing no matter how many times the room is cleaned. Obstacle 2 arrives like an insult. Fossils are scarce. A finger bone. A few teeth with roots like thick nails. That is all. You do not get a face, a pelvis, a skeleton laid out like a solved puzzle. You get whispers. Therefore, the imagination tries to fill the gap, but the discipline refuses. The case is built on code, not on cartoons. Obstacle 3 is worse because it is loud. Scouts, field reports, population studies, genome surveys bring back conflicting numbers. You see the Denisovan signal flare huge in some living people, Papua New Guinea, parts of island Southeast Asia, like a bright stain that refuses to wash out. But in others it is almost absent, like it never happens at all. Therefore, the case splits. Either multiple encounters happen across vast distances, or multiple Denisovans exist. You feel the room tilt because this is no longer a single missing cousin. This is a crowd. Obstacle 4 creeps in like mold. The more genomes get sampled, the more the data suggests extra shadows, ghost populations that leave introgression patterns without any known bones. Especially in Africa, signals appear like fingerprints on glass, but no camera catches the burglar. You are tracking intruders who never show their faces. Therefore, the map of human origins stops being a clean highway and becomes a crowded street fight in the dark, elbows, shouts, collisions, bodies brushing past bodies, nobody fully in control. You keep moving because the alternative is worse, admitting the story is unknowable. But the case does not want comfort. It wants rigor. It wants motive. Now imagine the moment the hunt turns from who exists to what matters. You sit with the dataset and shift the question. Not just ancestry. Function. You don't want folklore, you want a reason a fragment survives in living people. Random inheritance can persist, yes. But selection leaves teeth marks. Selection leaves winners. You pull up a gene linked to survival at altitude. EPS1. The Tibetan plateau becomes a mental image like a knife edge, thin air, lungs that burn, headaches that hammer, a place that punishes the unadapted. People live there anyway. Children run there. Mothers carry there. Therefore, something in the body cheats the oxygen debt. You see the cursor hover over a variant. The lab is quiet, but your skin feels loud. You feel sweat gather under gloves. Because if the variant is Denisovan, the implication is not just romance. It is rescue. It means an extinct human doesn't just meet modern humans. It saves modern humans. You run the comparison. The match hits like a gunshot in a quiet room. The Denisovan-like haplotype slots into the Tibetan story with brutal elegance, like a key sliding home. The data does not care about feelings. It simply sits there, undeniable. Therefore, the ghost becomes an accomplice, a donor of survival, a stranger who leaves a tool behind in your bloodstream. But the fog of war thickens instead of clearing. Was this one meeting, one brief collision in a valley, a single night of negotiation or coercion or desperate loneliness? Or many meetings, repeated across seasons, across generations? You don't know. The genome does not record consent. It does not record love. It records only that bodies exchange material and that some material persists. You dig deeper, chasing patterns across Asia like footprints that fork and rejoin. You see different Denisovan signals in different regions, multiple fingerprints at one crime scene. One signal in Oceania looks deep, heavy, ancient, like thick mud pressed hard. Another signal in East Asia looks different, like a separate hand touches the glass. Therefore, the case whispers of Denisovan diversity, groups scattered across huge distances like rival clans, each with their own genetic signature, each capable of meeting modern humans on their own terms. Now imagine stepping out of the lab and into the lost world itself, not as a tidy museum diorama, but as a dangerous present. You move through a forest edge where the line between human and animal is thin. You hear stone strike stone. You smell smoke. You feel hunger as a constant pressure under the ribs. Nobody here lives long without skill. You see a hunting party, modern humans, faces tense, hands scarred, pause at the sign of another group. You do not get a clear view. The trees break the scene. The light tricks the eye. But you sense the presence. Bodies watching bodies, calculating risk. The other group stands differently. Broader shoulders, unfamiliar proportions, a gait that suggests strength used to cold and steep ground. Denisovans, maybe. Or something else. The uncertainty is the point. A child coughs. A hand tightens on a spear shaft. You feel your own pulse in your fingertips because the moment is fragile. One wrong move and it becomes blood. But the groups do not immediately charge. Therefore, there is a pause, a negotiation without words, shared fear of winter, shared hunger, shared knowledge that a wounded hunter is a dead hunter. Trade can happen here. A tool can change hands. A glance can become an invitation or a threat. But even if the night ends without war, the future does not promise peace. Another day brings rival prey. Another day brings hunger. Therefore, alliances shift. Sometimes bodies collide as enemies. Sometimes they collide as desperate partners. Sometimes a captured person becomes a forced spouse. Sometimes a lonely person seeks warmth where warmth exists. The genome does not explain which. It only shows that contact happens often enough to leave traces that endure. Now you return to the lab with the smell of that imagined smoke still in your mind. You stare at charts and segments, but they stop being abstract. They become skin. They become breath. You feel the weight of it. You are not just reading history. You are catching history in the act of rewriting itself. The case expands. Denisovan DNA is not just a curiosity in mountain peoples. Signals appear in immune genes, in skin-related traits, in metabolism, little tweaks that can help or harm depending on environment. Therefore, the ghost is not simply a dead branch. It is a set of surviving tools, passed forward like stolen fire. But every tool has a price. Some archaic variants improve defense against pathogens, therefore they persist. But the same immune intensity can increase risk of autoimmune trouble in a different world with different diseases. You feel the moral weight press in. Adaptation is not kindness. It is trade-offs carved by survival. Imagine the lab receiving yet another genome from a living volunteer. A new file lands in the system like a sealed envelope. You see the progress bar fill. You hear the hard drive chatter. You feel anticipation like a held breath. This person walks streets, checks messages, buys food, laughs ordinary. But the code inside carries a hidden crowd. The analysis runs and again a Denisovan segment appears, then another. But this time the pattern does not match the known Denisovan reference perfectly. It is close, but different, like a dialect. Therefore your certainty fractures again. Maybe the Denisovan from Denisova cave is only one witness. Maybe other Denisovan-like populations exist across Asia, leaving DNA but no bones. The case becomes bigger than the cave. The cave is only the first flashlight beam. Now imagine the field side of the investigation, because the lab cannot dig up a skeleton. You fly to high plateaus where breath shortens. You ride into valleys where caves open like mouths. You see archaeologists scrape dirt grain by grain, because one careless hand destroys a century of context. You feel the tension when a tooth appears, tiny, yellowed, stubborn. Not dramatic, not cinematic, but everything depends on it. But the tooth does not come with a name. It comes with questions. Can protein residues survive when DNA fails? Can enamel carry a signature that points toward a ghost? Therefore, new methods rise: paleoproteomics, chemical clues, indirect evidence. The detective toolkit grows because the suspect refuses to sit for a portrait. You hear the rumor mill spin when a jawbone from Xiaha appears, high on the Tibetan plateau. The claim spreads, Denisovan. But you do not see certainty. You see careful language, hedged conclusions, scientists arguing because the stakes are huge. Therefore, the jaw becomes both evidence and battleground, a clue that might anchor the ghost in flesh. Still, the fog holds. You don't know how Denisovans look in full. You don't know how they speak. You don't know their myths. But you do know something terrifyingly intimate. Parts of them operate inside living bodies right now. Imagine a hospital ward in the modern world. You see a patient breathe with effort. You hear the beep of monitors. You smell disinfectant. The doctor talks about oxygen saturation, about adaptation, about risk. But beneath the clinical words, evolution whispers. Therefore, the Denisovan contribution is not a story for museums only, it is physiology in motion. You feel the narrative pressure build to a single question. If the ghost leaves benefits, why does the ghost vanish? Why does Denisovan life end while modern human life continues? You turn the question over like a blade in the hand. Extinction is not one bullet. It is many small cuts. Competition, climate swings, disease, demography. Therefore, even a strong group can fade if numbers drop and recovery fails. A harsh winter does not need to kill everyone. It only needs to kill enough. Now imagine the moment of disappearance, not as a dramatic last stand with banners, but as a slow thinning. You see fewer footprints at the river. You hear fewer voices in the gorge. You feel the silence expand. A child is not born. A hunter does not return. Therefore, the lineage narrows until it becomes a statistical trace, then only a segment in someone else's blood. Back in the lab, the dust settles in a different way, through numbers, confidence intervals, replication. You stare at the cost in cold terms. Entire humans are gone, reduced to traces in living genomes. No monuments. No written names. Just DNA. Verdict forms without ceremony, like a judge reading a sentence. Denisovans are real, confirmed by ancient DNA, yet they are also bigger than the cave that names them. Their genetic echoes spread far beyond Siberia, stitched into people across Asia and Oceania. But the genome hints at more, other hidden hominins, unexcavated, unremembered, still haunting the dataset. Imagine holding your own wrist and feeling the pulse there. The beat is yours. But the tools inside the blood are not purely yours. You carry survival hacks, immune tweaks, and physiological trade-offs forged by encounters you never consent to and can barely imagine. Therefore, prehistory is not distant. It is inside you, working shifts every day in lungs, skin, metabolism. Now the modern mirror rises, sharp and uncomfortable. You live in a world obsessed with purity, pure identity, pure lineage, pure category. But the genome shows a different truth. Humanity is a braid, not a line. It is contact, collision, exchange. Therefore, any story that sells clean separation is already a lie. You see the same pattern today in different clothing. Borders harden. Groups fear contamination of culture, of blood, of belonging. But the body's own archive mocks that fear. The archive says survival often comes from the outsider, from the stranger, from the unexpected donor. Yet the same mixing carries risk, misunderstanding, conflict. The lesson is not that contact is always good. The lesson is that contact is real and denial is costly. Now imagine closing the file. The cursor hovers over the X in the corner of the screen. You feel the urge to end the case, to seal it, to say the ghost is solved. But you can't. Because every new genome sampled is another flashlight beam, and the footprints do not stop. They lead into the dark. The verdict sits heavy. The cost is entire lives erased, cultures vanished without record, families whose laughter never reaches the present except as a molecular echo. The gain is equally heavy. Oxygen in thin air, defenses against sickness, resilience in harsh places, gifts bought by contact in a dangerous world. Therefore, the human story is not a solo hero's journey. It is a crowded battlefield of kin. Now the legacy question lands like a final piece of evidence placed on the table. Imagine standing at a crossroads with no map, only instincts and fear and hunger, facing another human who is almost, but not quite, like you. You see their eyes measure yours. You feel the decision form in the body before it reaches language. Do you choose the wall or the exchange?